Welcome to the Elokus channel. This is class number 13 in the discourse Chukas, which is the seventh discourse in the overall book, Pshashek Dimu 5672. This is the seventh discourse, and again, class number 13. And this is, I think, the third class in chapter 28. Okay, so yesterday we left off over here in the last class that after we completed the discussion on the two parts of the tzimtzum of the contraction, what it would take in order to allow the kav, the emergence of the light, the post-tzimtzum light, that it goes through a double tzimtzum. One tzimtzum b'derech siluk, which means it removes the infinite potential completely, the infinite light completely. And then, which that brings out kind of a highlights the potential for 10 sfirot, which are the essa spheres agnuzais, which is like a secondary element of the Or Ein Sof. And then the dividing, the second tzimtzum, which is b'derech miut, which is dividing this light that is a unified potential for 10 spheros into their individual expressions, and that happens when the kav, when the Or HaKav comes forth. And we learned in last class that with this, based on this idea, we'll understand how when we speak about the lights of the spheros, of all the attributes in Atzilus, and even the light of the Kav, how come we find a contradictory element, and we find something contradicting regarding the Kav, or regarding this light? According to from one place, it seems to imply that the Kav is a Giloy HaHelem, which means it's bringing forth a hidden potential that was already there before. It's just a revelation of it. It's not something new. And that's why primarily this he derived primarily from the idea that Atzilus is called Atzilus. Atzilus means emanation, which emanation means to take something that is already there and just emanating it, not producing something utterly new. But on the other hand, we also say that the spheros of Atzilus, even the first one, even Chachma, is called Yesh Maayon, something from nothing, which means it doesn't exist in its source. It's like something totally new. And the answer of one refers to the Kalim, or one refers to the Or, was attempted, but it was rejected. So we were saying that even the Or, even the light, and even in the light in its most pristine state and its highest place, we're not even higher than Chachma Vatzilus, even higher than Keser, even in the beginning of the Kav, is also to a certain degree Yesh Maayon, something from nothing. But how is it Yesh Maayon if we say that the Kav is the same light that was before the Tzimtzum? It's Choyzer Veheyer, after the Tzimtzum, Hashem reintroduces light, so it's the same light. So how do we reconcile this seemingly contradictory idea? So we explain, depending on what we are referring to before the tzimtzum. When we are referring to the pure Or Ein Sof in its purity, before the Alos HaRatzon, before Hashem had a desire already to curtail that infinite light within Himself and to focus it on a recipient. But when the light was just shining purely as a pure infinite light, the dimension that he referred to is the source of the Or HaSovev, the state of the Sovev, meaning later it's going to become the encompassing energies that encompass and wrap themselves around everything equally. And it's also the level of Spheros and Kates, where you can't say it's a 10 Spheros, but without an end Spheros. Well, to that, the light of the Kav is a Yesh Maayon, something new. Why? Because Hashem reduced the light and hid it completely. Siluk removed it completely without anything left. We'll see in a moment. That's today's class is going to speak if there's something left, but removal completely. And therefore, that which is coming out later is something utterly new. That's when we are comparing the Kav to that first and higher dimension. However, the Shorish of the Kav in the Or Ein Sof, which is called Essa Spheres Agnuzos, which is kind of like within the Orin Sof, embedded and hidden in it is, imagine in a big circle is a smaller circle, a hidden, vague, undetectable circle. And that is already a potential, and that becomes more highlighted after the first half of its first part of the tzimtzum, so to speak, after phase one of the tzimtzum, becomes more highlighted. Well, this potential for 10 spheres, although it is way, way, way more infinite and richer and abstract than when the light of the Kav comes forth. Because the light of the Kav is already going to come forth highlighting 10 potentials. And now it's not highlighting the 10, because the 10 are all one. But still, it's there already. Over there, it's called Giloy HaHelam. The Kav that's coming forth is a revelation of the potential that was there. That's how we reconciled both of them. Okay, this was the idea we learned in last class. But the very last point that he said was that even though the initial light, which is the higher level of the Or Ein Sof, is blocked out and knocked out completely by the Tzimtzum completely hides that light utterly, and it's not b'derech miyut, which means it doesn't lessen it. It completely removes it. However, it leaves over a trace, and that little trace, and the reason for that is because kol davar shebekadusha einenu mistalik legamri. Every element of holiness is permanent. Since we're dealing with something holy, even when it leaves, and for sure the light left from this space, it doesn't leave completely. It leaves over a little trace of itself. So what's that trace? That's what we're going to talk about today. Okay. On the one hand, whatever is coming afterwards is completely new. It's not the same DNA. It's something it's a chachma me'ayin timati, something new. But yet there is a trace. So how does that work? So let's see. We're holding right here after the parentheses. In my book, it's Daf Mem Hey, about a tiny bit past half page. Yeshlaima, we can say that the leftover trace that we're talking about from the higher level of the Or Ein Sof. Zeu b'chinas Or Ein Sof. This is the level of Or Ein Sof, that dwells in Chachma. In Perek Lamed Hey, it says in Sifrei Shel Beinanim, which means the book of Tanya, chapter 35, Bahago, in the side note. Shachachma nikra emes, that Chachma is called truth, because Chachma contains within a Chachma, which is the first sphere of Atzilus, first attribute. It's called truth, because it contains within itself the truth of God. The ultimate real being, as he is present in Chachma. It's not present in any other sphere, like via Chachma, it's kind of, it carries through further as well, but where is it captured? It's captured in Chachma. Chachma is the place where it dwells. Shachachma nikra emes, the Chachma is called truth, mishum shaboy, because in it, Shayre dwells Or Ein Sof. The Or Ein Sof dwells in Chachma. So what does that mean when Or Ein Sof is dwelling in Chachma? Didn't we say that the Tzimtzum completely blocks it out? So yesterday we suggested maybe it means that the light of the Kav shines in Chachma. And the Kav is still connected to the Or Ein Sof before the Tzimtzum. And we explained now what is the Or Ein Sof before the Tzimtzum, where the Kav is still a continuation from, is the Esespheres Agnuzais. And maybe that suffices, and that's what we mean, Or Ein Sof. We mean a little tidbit, a little presence of the Esespheres Agnuzais, which is the Malchus of the Ein Sof, which is the level of the Malchut of the Ein Sof, the tail end, so to speak, of the Ein Sof. Bechinas Achroina, as he called it earlier, of the Ein Sof. And maybe that's good enough for Chachma to be called Emes, because it has of the Or Ein Sof. But it seems like so the Rebbe over here, the Rebbe Rashab is saying no. When we say that Chachma is called Emes because it contains within in the Or Ein Sof, it means higher even than the Esespheres Agnuzais element of Or Ein Sof. Or Ein Sof, it means Or Ein Sof as Or Ein Sof is in its essential state, before it becomes mitigated and somehow conditioned to be a source for a limitation. I know, as he says. So where is that? But isn't that completely hidden? No, but that's what we're saying now. Aroshim is left on. That's the trace. The Or Ein Sof believable of the Or Ein Sof that is believable. V'ayim asher kasav b'likuti Torah devin hamaschil v'yikach. V'ayim asher kasav v'masher yisbar le'el Perek shin nun ches. So we can look later in the bottom. He says, chapter 390 is 358. Okay, I didn't get a chance to look that up. So I just want you to remember when we get to chapter 358 to remind us, this is what we learned in chapter 28. If anybody remembers that, you get a cupcake. Okay, for remembering that. So again, we're going to check that out, and maybe tomorrow. And tomorrow, if I remember, I'll go check it, and maybe I'll tell you tomorrow. But if you remember it when we get to Shin Nun Ches, then you deserve something really special. But in any case, so there he's going to explain this a little better. Look at the Maamor of Vayikach Korach, Perek Beis. Connected to this. I don't know when you're listening to this class, but we're teaching this on Parshas Korach, so connection to the Parsha. In the second Perek, the B'chachma mislabish, that in Chachma is enclosed. When we say that in Chachma is enclosed the Or Ein Sof, it's Or HaSoviv, the light of the Soviv. Which, if you remember now, these two levels of Or Ein Sof that we're talking about, Esesvirois, the Esesviros Agnuzos is the Shirish of the Or Pnimi, it's the Shirish of the Mamalakal Alman, it's the root of the internal light, it's the source of the Mamalakal. The Or Ein Sof that is higher than the Esesviros Agnuzos, that's the Shirish of the Or HaSoviv. So now it would really fit well. This supports the idea that the Or Ein Sof that's Shoreh, that is dwelling in Chachma, is what it says over there, that it's in Chachma mislabish, the Or HaSoviv, the light of the Soviv. However, the advantage of it being in Chachma over it being in Keser is when it is in Keser, it's utterly above the Or Pnimi. It's completely transcendental light. When it's in Keser, or definitely when it's in the Or, when it's dwelling in Chachma, it's kind of touching the Or Pnimi. So it's like the Or Pnimi, the Kalim, the vessels are getting a little taste of pure infinite light. Over there he brings a mashal. This is the example, the metaphor Sheba Medrash. From the large mirrors and small mirrors. And the small mirrors capture the same image that is in the large mirror. And Sham, look over there. Nevertheless, Yesh Laima. And that's the trace. Yesh Laima. However, to understand, when we say that the Or, not to think that there is a link, because if there would be a real link between the Or Ein Sof and Chachma, and that means there would be a continuum, Chachma would then just be a continuum of the Or Ein Sof. So then Chachma would not be Yesh Me'ayin. It would be a continuum. So he's still holding on to what he was telling us the whole time. That from the higher level of the Or Ein Sof was completely blocked. So that's why he's juggling that. He's literally juggling that. And he says, Yeshlam, you can say, it's a trace from the Or Ein Sof unbelievable. From the Or Ein Sof unbelievable. And a trace is a whole different level than being a little bit of the light. A little bit of the light is one thing, a trace is something else. A trace is after you erased everything. You erased the entire page, but there's a trace left. So you erased it, but there's a trace left. In other words, there is a sign that it once was. And even though there is a sign, even though it's only a sign that it once was, when you're talking about a sign, a trace of what once was of the Or Ein Sof, that itself is infinite. Now the proof that it's only, or he's giving, that it's only a roshim, that really the light was completely removed. And this is a roshim, which a roshim is a roshim meaning a trace. It's like a new metzius. It's like something new. It's old, but completely redefined once it's a roshim. How do we see that? Because we say, nevertheless we say areza min kanaf. See, it's only the type of the kanaf of the corner of the garment, kanaf mamish, and not literally the garment. Remember, the way that we can get to know the divine is by studying the Torah and studying the mitzvot. The commandments, they are the best conveyors of information, of the deepest secrets of how things are. So since Hashem gave us tzitzis, and remember we spoke that the tzitzis reflect these two lights, the Soivev light and the Mamale light, the encompassing light, which in its original form is the Or Ein Sof A, the higher level of the Or Ein Sof. And then the Kanaf. What's the Kanaf? The Kanaf is the Or Pnimi, which is the Kav, which is rooted in the Esespheres Agnuzos. However, what did we say about it? And we say that what? That the tzitzis, which are the fringes, they are connected, and they have to be from the same material. But even though they have to be from the same material, they're not fringes from the material itself. It's not that the talus itself extends itself and becomes fringes at the corner. You take separate threads and you make a hole and you feed them through, which means they're attached and they're the same material. So there's something like it, but they're not it. So it's like, I don't know why I'm thinking about this. It's like, maybe it's connected. On the temple, there was the Mizbeach. There was the altar where they offered all the sacrifice. The altar had a ramp called a kevesh, which is a ramp. So the ramp had to be going all the way up to the altar. Yet, the ramp did not touch the altar. There was how much space? Do you know how much space it was? Like a hair. A thread of a hair you can put in that space. That's it. You try to put anything through. Anything can't fit. A hair you can put in. You can put a floss, dental floss maybe. Other than that, it's right up. And so this is the idea. This tiny little disconnect. So the same, similar to that is what he's saying over here. It's connected. It's of it, but not it. That's the idea. Mink, it's not it. Why is it not it? Because it's not a tidbit of the Or. It's a rosham. Now a rosham, it's interesting. He doesn't call it a reflection. It's hard to really define. What does this mean? It's a rosham. It's a trace. So it's but not. Rak, well, that's what he's saying. Oh, you say, well, it's only a little trace, so what is it already? Rak le'oser rosham ein sofa bli gvul. Since it's the rosham of the Ein Sof that is truly infinite, harei ze gam kein b'bchinas ribui oyer. It's also ribui oyer, a lot of light, and not just a lot, ubebchinas bli gvul, and truly, and in a bchina of bli gvul, of without a limitation. Unlike the Esespheres Agnuzos, which are already Shirish Agvul, root of Gvul. This is a trace from something higher. I'm just going to skip a minute. There's a little parenthesis here because I want to first finish the subject. We'll come back to that. Ulefi zeh yesh levar, and based on this, we can also explain gam l'shita zu, also to this shita. What does he mean l'dishita? This whole idea that he's presenting over here in Ayin Beis, and this entire discourse and these chapters that we're learning is really a novel idea, which means it's a shita, it's an opinion. It's not, there's another shita as well. Primarily the shita of the Ramak. And in Hasidus, sometimes it looks like it's explained similar to the Ramak's take. Ramosha Kardov is not like the Arizal. This is what he's developing here in Ayin Beis. I guess once he develops it in Ayin Beis, this becomes the final conclusion that this is the way it is. But in other places in Hasidus, it kind of follows the other shita. What's the other shita? The question over here is the kav, which is a re-illumination of light into the black hole, into the tzimtzum. Is the kav plugged in? And the kav is definitely plugged into the Ein Sof or Ein Sof. But do we make this differentiation that he's making over here in the last few chapters? That in the Or Ein Sof itself, the Esespheros, Hagnuzos, are tainting the light. And there's like an Or Ein Sof A and an Or Ein Sof B. And the kav is rooted in the Or Ein Sof B, not in Or Ein Sof A. In other words, the kav to the Or Ein Sof A, like we discussed earlier, to the higher level of the Or Ein Sof, the kav is completely something new. It's like Yesh Me'ayin, something from new. So this is this shita that he's talking about over here. The other shita, which he's going to make reference to in a few moments, is that no, the kav is plugged. The kav is a re-illumination of pure Or Ein Sof, real Or Ein Sof. Or Ein Sof A is the kav. That's where the kav is reflecting, and therefore the kav really, in truth, is pashut betachlos apshitas, has no colorings and no nothing. I guess what's the Esespheris Agnuzos? We'll have to say that's Kalim, but that's the root of the Kalim. It's not the root of the light. And the light of the Kav is pure light. If so, if it's pure infinity, how can the world handle it? How can the creations even, how can it begin to create? So the answer is because of that the Kav is being fed through the Rishimu. We once spoke about this. Then when the Kav is reintroduced, a Kav of light, and blowing through the Tzimtzum, it's going through the Rishimu. And the Rishimu, which is left over, which is the Koyach HaGavul, that imparts onto the light a limitation. In other words, the light itself is infinite, but since it's being passed through the Rishimu is it's like the idea that Kalim, vessels, design the light. The light itself doesn't have any colors, but when you feed the light through a green light, a red light, that kind of creates the light, the colorings. And that's what we usually say regarding the lights of Atzilus. The Chiddush over here, according to the first Shita, according to the first opinion, the opinion that he's developing over here, is that no, the lights are also mitziyarim. The lights are also subtly tainted to with a certain coloring, with a certain characteristic. But on the other Shita is no, the light is utterly simple, and the light is only receiving a definition or design through the Rishim. Okay, so now he's going to say like this. Okay, so these are the two Shitas over here. So he's saying that even according to this Shita that we're developing over here, now we'll also understand how the Kav can have a certain quality that really, according to this Shita, the Kav should not have. What is that? Well, it says that, let's read it inside. Chukas tells us regarding the Kav, the Kav has within it two contradictory qualities. The Kav acts seemingly in a contradictory manner. Number one, the Kav it's called Kav, it's a line. And one of the attributes of this line is that it's a Kav Amida. It's not just a line, it's a measuring line, which means it measures out in a very measured manner how much energy each world and each sphera and each realm should have. So it in that sense, it has a very strong limiting quality to it. Okay, Shukav Amida. That's one they want to have. And in other words, it sets the limitations and the boundaries for each world, for each attribute, which means it creates his chalkos. It creates parameters and divisions. It gives portions. It divides. In that sense, it's a divider. But we say the kav has another quality. It also takes all these separate different worlds and sphirot and elements and is able to unify them all. It's a tremendous unifier. It unifies everything and integrates everything. It bonds and it meyachids. And it brings integration into the sphirot. So what's the question? The fact that the kav is able to differentiate and make, well, if the kav is coming from Esespheris Agnuzais, which Esespheris Agnuzais has within it 10 files, we can understand that what the kav is just doing, the kav is bringing those files into the open. So if it's bringing those files into the open, it's setting one file A, that file which is Chesed, and another file B, which is Gevura. It's bringing out the various different potentials, and then each one is going to have its own character. Then the kav should not have the power to unify them, because all the kav is an expression of the. It's bringing out the details, so it should be kind of stuck in the details. Once it's bringing forth the detail, how is it then transcending above the details and unifying them? That means that you have to say that the kav has something in it that is above these individual files, these individual colorings. It must have something that is an equalizer. But how is that? If the kav is coming from a place that essentially is made up of ischalkos. Yes, the place where it comes from is all the spheres are together, but they're together there just because they haven't yet manifested. Through the kav they manifest. But what is the kav? It's a manifesting. It's an opening up. It's causing the flower to flower and to open up. But still, each petal on the rose will be its own petal. How in the world is it now kind of rising above? But now we understand. Because the kav, in addition to coming from the Esespheres Agnuzais, which is what makes the kav be the measuring, the moded, the measurer to exact and bring forth differentiation, the kav also has a connection. It has a tinge of pure Or Ein Sof. How? Because the Rishimu is not the Rishimu, the Roshem. I don't want to call it Rishimu because we're going to differentiate from the Rishimu. A Roshem, a trace of pure Or Ein Sof that is above these 10 spheros, is also contained in that kav. And it's from that power of the Or Ein Sof HaSovev, of the higher power of the kav, in which it can unify and bring them all together. That's what he's saying over here. It unifies the spheroids. So now this parenthesis I will learn out of here. According to the other opinion, as it's been explained in another place, not this shita, not the shita we're learning now. Shahakav shorshoy, that the kav is really rooted Ma'or Ein Sof believable. The kav really is a pure reintroduction of Or Ein Sof, pashut, utterly pashut. And there's no Or Ein Sof A and B. It's just Or Ein Sof. If so, where does the limitations come from? But rather, it passes through the Rishimu. And the Rishimu is then imposing its letters, its definition onto the kav. So then we can understand how the kav has two capabilities. The measuring element of the kav is not attributed to the kav. It's attributed to the effects of the Rishimu on the kav, and that's why the kav is producing all these measurements. But the unification of all the spheres, to unify them and to bond them together, which needs a power that's above differentiation, that's the kav itself. Understand? That's if we're learning that the kav is really rooted in the pure Or Ein Sof. But according to what we explain now, that the kav is really only rooted in the Esespheres Agnuzais, which is the secondary element of the Or Ein Sof. So where does the kav then take the koach to be able to unify things, the power to unify? So he says it's not a problem. Because even in the kav, there is a tidbit, there's a roishem of Or Ein Sof. That's the idea. So again, then it's understood simply. Since essentially the kav is beligavol, infinite, without the Rishimu even hindering it, it would be infinite. That's why it's able to tie and unify. And the measuring element of it and its limitation element, that's because of the Rishimu. That's not even coming from the kav. But according to what we've explained over here, which is this whole chidush that he's explaining, that the Or Pnimi exists within the Or Ein Sof. That in the Or Ein Sof there is Or Makif and Or Pnimi within the Or Ein Sof. And the Or Pnimi, that's the source of the kav, which is Esespheres Agnuzais. So if it's already Or Pnimi, then it relates already to differentiation. Where does then the kav get the koach to transcend? Yesh loymar. The imayos, even though shegam b'shar shayesh Esespheres, that even in its source in the Or Ein Sof, it has already 10 spheros. And therefore the kav is just presenting those 10 spheros. And that's the reason that's why it is a a measuring kav, meaning not from an external force. It's not the letters of the Rishimu that are imposing on the kav limitation. The kav inherently has already a limitation. It's more essential, its measuring component. That it's measuring out the lights that are revealing in the Esa spheres because it's essentially coming from a place of 10 spheres. Like we'll explain later in the next few chapters, we're going to get to that. Nevertheless, it still has an ability to rise above this all. Why? It still can tie and unify all the spheres because it has a little trace from the Orin Sof, that's believable, ha'oila al kulam, that rises above them all. The Gamar Roishem, even though it's only a trace, but a trace from that is also Itzav. And yet, it's still only a trace. So go figure this out. But the Kav itself, to its source and its root in the Orin Sof, not the Roishem. The Roishem is the extra bonus. It's a cherry on the top. But the Kav itself, to its source, Hubchenes Gilu Yahelim, is not Yesh Me'ayin, is Gilu Yahelim. It reveals what is concealed, because there is Esespheres already in the Or in Sof, because the Esespheres Agnuzos are in the Or itself, as he explained earlier. There's one more parenthesis that we didn't learn yet, and we'll do that, Be'ezus Hashem, tomorrow's class. And this really is the end of chapter 28, although there's still going to be a nice few classes over here, because he's now going to tie it back to explain the Parsha element, the Parsha's Chukas, like he does in every Maayor, how he explains the Torah, the questions that he asked at the beginning of the Maayor pertaining to that Torah portion, which this case is Parshat Chukas. Okay. Meanwhile, we should see Mashiach today.